Hello, Devlin here with you, and welcome to another edition of my pirate radio show. It's a brand new episode, as I like to do each week, and thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to sit with me and listen to me talk for a little bit. It's just me here this week, and I'm going to talk about some things that are on my mind. We've got some movie-related stuff coming up in the next little bit, but right now I'd like to talk about creativity. As I've been talking about in past episodes recently, I just did a show called How We First Met. I've been doing a lot of plugging for it because it was my return to the stage, and I've just done it, and I had a fantastic time. The show went absolutely well. It was both nights sold out, and everybody seemed to have a great time. For me as host, it's the couples I interview that I make sure have a good time, because they're the ones, I love to see their smiling faces at the end, because that means I've done a good job interviewing them, and our improvisers did a great job bringing their memories back to life. It was 2 solid shows. I'm so proud of my fellow cast and crew. Thank you if you took the time to come out to the show, and if you didn't, that's cool. I had a lot of people wishing me well, and that's good too. And thank you, whatever it came to, because it means a lot. It was great to be back on stage. I was so hungry for this too. I did have some nerves. I think I always will have nerves. I always said, and I think I've probably said this before, if it ever comes to the point where I don't have nerves, I don't know if I want to do it, because when I have nerves, that just means that I just want to do the best job I possibly can. It doesn't really necessarily mean that I can't do the job. It's just, I really want to bring it, and I feel I did bring it. I felt very confident in myself. In fact, just for the whole run of it, I just felt like I was in a stronger place than I had been in the past. And like last year when I did the show, I was a total wreck. But this year, as I said, I was just hungry for it. And it reminded me that creativity is such a powerful thing, and I am so lucky to surround myself with so many talented people. When I did this podcast, I could have just sat here and just said, okay, each week I'm gonna talk by myself and come up with things, because I have lots of things I can talk about, movies, TV, you know, if you've listened to the show for the last year, you know. But I also like to share the spotlight with talented people, and creativity comes in many ways. I know some wonderful, improvisers, obviously, theater actors. I know musicians and poets, and I am so lucky that I've surrounded myself with such a great group of talent, and they also happen to be wonderful people. I think in a lot of ways, sometimes they are wonderful people because they release that creativity. And creativity can come in any form. It doesn't have to just be, on a level where you're just performing. You can be creative by making stuff, I know people that, make little ornaments or little crafts. People who crochet or knit, or people who make furniture and tables, and that's their creative outlet. I think it's important to have a creative outlet, whether you're writing or making music or performing or whatever. Even if it's stuff that the world isn't going to see, I think it's important to get it out there. And of course it comes down to comfort level, how far you're going to take it. In some ways, even this podcast is obviously creative, but it's my artistic outlet. And, it may not be like award-winning stuff, or I might not get millions of hits on it, but I entertain people. People tell me that they love listening to the show, that they like to hear what I bring each week, and And so that right there is a creative outlet, and I think it's important for everybody to find theirs. As I said, it can come in any form. Cooking. Cooking is a creative outlet. There's just so many ways, and I think it's important, especially for me. I'm not trying to say any of my podcasts are going to outlive me, although now that they're put on the internet, obviously they could stick around for forever and a day. We don't know exactly how the internet is, but it looks like websites I used to go to apparently are still out there that like we used to work on. We used to do a show called a website, Hip Shockwaves, and I think you can find bits and pieces, if you really look. I haven't lately, but I remember somebody who used to work on it with us. We used to, it was a monthly magazine we used to do, and a couple of friends of mine, we used to do articles, and we had quizzes, it was actually pretty neat to do, and apparently it's still out there. So, yeah, this is going to outlive me, of course, but, I don't know for how long or anything. It's not like it's going to be Shakespeare or something that will carry on the masses, but I don't need to carry on the masses as long as I've touched people's lives and entertained them. That will be my legacy, because I don't have kids. And I honestly, for me, kids are a legacy. I think the legacy is carrying on their name. Carrying on the people's names and stuff like that. Obviously, they're carrying on the genes, everything like that. I'll never have kids, so this is kind of my legacy, performing. And as I said, everybody in that audience had a great time that night. Everybody entertained. The improvisers and my team had a hot night with it and stuff. And everybody in that room shared an experience. And, until the last one dies, that experience will be somewhere in their memory. Some, will have forgotten it within a day or two, but others, especially the people in the cast and crew, will keep it with them for a long, long time. I'm hoping that the couples that I interviewed will also keep it in their hearts for a long, long time. And whenever they hear we're doing that show again, they'll say, hey, we did that. That was amazing. And so I stress that you should find a creative outlet, and be proud of it, whatever it is. Even, you don't have to do it for the masses. If you're a good cook and you cook for, just your friends and family, that's wonderful. They'll remember that. It's a memory. Creativity is something that should happen now, whether you're, writing a book that nobody sees, you'd be surprised, even if you touch one person in your lifetime, whether you've made one impact, that is a huge impact, because you don't know how far reaching that will go. Kind of like the pay it forward. And, it's the start of a new year. Find your creativity. I'm also impressed when I see people who are constantly looking for stuff. They try different things. They'll do pottery classes. They'll try art classes. They'll try to pick up a musical instrument, even late in life. Why do they do this? Because they need that creative outlet. And I am definitely a supporter of this. The rush I got from being on stage and afterwards, I felt like a rock star. I just felt that we hit every note. I can tell the reaction of the crowd. And it's just amazing. It is a little hard when you go back to your regular job the next, Monday morning or whatever. But you know what? I still have that. And it's something I will do again. I'm looking already at some possibilities of future shows. I'm going to continue to podcast. That will continue to be my creativity. And I will continue to invite people on the show to give them a chance to voice their creativity. And it's always inspiring to hear other people, too. And that's the other reason I bring co-hosts on now and again, because I learn from them. I know sometimes we just have a goofy time and laugh, there are some real solid moments in there. I urge you to see what you think is your creativity and, be open with it. You could be good at many different things. But you should find your niche or something. Hell, you can do multiple things. Even think about something you pick up that you maybe gave up. Like, I used to play the banjo when I was younger, but I don't anymore. Why not give it a try again? It doesn't even have to be something that elaborate. I think we're losing ourselves creatively. I think we can get consumed in our work and all our responsibilities. And I get it, you raise families, you don't have a lot of time. But to be honest with you, I think it's good for kids to see their parents doing something creative. And to be honest, I know a lot of people will be saying, no, it's not. But even if you just go out and do sports or you play in like a friendly league of something, that is creative too. Hell, I think going out and having good conversation, I consider that creative. What's not creative is when you're just kind of not doing anything. You're not doing anything. And we need times like that. Don't get me wrong. There's times that I just want to sit in front of the computer or sit in front of the TV or go to a movie. That's not very creative, but, it does inspire. For me, stuff like that inspires. And we need those times. We need those times. But any time that you can create, you should, because it is such an amazing feeling. And I dare you even to take it up a notch. I used to create, I still do, but when I was younger, I role played. So I had a small group of people who would see my storytelling. And then I went to improv one day and I started doing shows and finally got to produce my own shows. And I suddenly put my product out there. Even doing these podcasts, I'm putting my product out there. And yes, you open yourself up for criticism. And in this day and age, that's a horrible thing. But you know what? You also put yourself up for such positive, overwhelming feedback. I got such great comments to me after I did the show. And it's been a while since I've heard it. I get complimented all the time, but for doing something that I enjoy to do and something I know, I'm looking forward to doing How We First Met next year. It looks like they want to do it. They're even talking about possibly taking it into different directions. I would love that. I would love a regular chance to interview. That's what I love about the podcast. And I'm becoming a little bit more bolder too. I have so many talented people that I want to ask. But now I'm getting to the point where I'm starting to ask people that aren't just close friends. I'm, taking chances on, inviting people that I don't know or I'm going to interview because I just find them fascinating and I'd love to give them a forum. And so I'm taking a chance and I think it's going to be really great and I'm going to learn more because I'll be meeting new people and then introducing them to you when we do the things. I'm still going to have friends on and we're going to be goofy sometimes because that's what I like about this show. This show isn't just a spiritual awakening like I'm talking now. But I can't stress enough to be creative. I know times get busy, times get crazy, but you need that outlet. It'll put so much in your heart. It'll put so much in your mind. And you never know where taking it to the next level will go. And, if you're like cooking or doing crafts and stuff like that, what I'm talking about the next level is, maybe try selling it. Try selling some of your crafts out in there's lovely craft places in Hamilton now. There's lots of shows all over the place. Or cooking, have a dinner party. If that's not something you normally do, invite people over, cook for them. Just, because everything's positive, something like that. Start a creative writing group. Use Facebook, find other writers, and find ways. There's always ways you can step things up. Anyhow, I think I've exhausted this topic enough. I'm going to take on a different topic. There's been a lot of buzz lately about the Oscars. A campaign called Oscars So White has started up, and I'm going to tackle that. I don't tend to go there too often, but I want to say my piece on this one, and I'm going to have that when we come back. Welcome back to Devlin's Pirate Radio Show. I'm Devlin, and right now I'd like to talk about a very serious topic. There's probably more important problems in the world, but this is a problem that's escalated for a while now. It is a campaign called Oscars So White, and I wasn't going to tackle this, but then I thought, why not? Everybody else is putting their 2 cents worth. Let me explain to you about what the Oscars mean to me. When I was a little boy, I saw Star Wars and absolutely fell in love with it. When it was up for Best Picture, back in the day when movies like that could be up for Best Picture, I begged my parents to let me watch the Oscars. Now, I never seen the Oscars before, but they said yes, I could. And so, many of you know the Oscars usually run like past midnight, but they were okay with it. I was like 8 or something at the time. Anyhow, I watched the Oscars and absolutely fell in love with the Oscars. Being a movie buff even back then, or just starting out. Star Wars was my first real adult movie. Before that, it was just, kids' movies we went to see. But anyhow, I loved it. I loved the feel of it. I liked seeing the celebrities and stuff. We're going back to like 1970. The Star Wars Oscars would have been 78. Anyhow, and so it became a yearly tradition that I would watch the Oscars, and I would watch all of it. Even those short, subjects and all those things. I loved everything. Even back in the day when they didn't show the red carpet as much, but I got into it, and I watched it every year and just loved it. I even got to the point where when they announced the Oscars, I wanted to see it live, and I'd get chills when they'd announce the names. And then, basically, I just was absolutely mad about it, and I loved, was crazy for the Oscars. And I watched them religiously every year. I hadn't missed one. I even went out to see them once at a bar where they had a trivia game, but I didn't miss them. I got to see them all because it was Oscar trivia, and we wound up winning that night because my brother was smart enough, like he predicted who would win, but there was lots of movie trivia, and he was smart enough to know, I'm going to take Devlin with me because he knows movies. We wound up winning a gift certificate that night. We won the whole night, and it was for a jewelry store, I remember, and we split it. Anyhow, I was, as I said, I was Oscar crazy like everyone else. I liked seeing the movies. I liked predicting. I liked just seeing who would win. And then came the year that I was disillusioned from the Oscars. A year that I finally walked away from the Oscars. And it was a hard decision to do because we're talking decades, because this didn't happen until the 2000s. It was the year Brokeback Mountain was up for Best Picture, and it was predicted to win Best Picture. And I was so excited because I love that movie on so many levels. Heath Ledger and Jake Gyllenhaal, everybody involved did such a great job with that movie. I also knew, being a gay man, how important that movie would be because, a lot of people had billed it the cowboy romance movie, and it's so much more than that. It's a romance movie. It doesn't matter that the two lead characters are men. It's an important film, and I knew as a gay man that this would be breaking so much. It would be so helpful in the community if this movie won Best Picture. And it was going into it and had no problems. And the night progressed. I had my friends over, I remember, and, it won Best Original Score, and it won Best Adapted Screenplay, and it won Best Director for Ang Lee. And basically, I was a little disappointed when Heath Ledger and Jake Gyllenhaal didn't win. I still, to this day, as much as I might get in trouble for it, I still think Heath Ledger should have won for Brokeback Mountain over The Dark Knight. Yeah, he was great in The Joker, but he should be commended for taking on such a role and doing such a great job with it. So they didn't win, and I was okay with that because we were coming up to Best Picture, and this was going to be a monumental time for gay people everywhere. And what transpired was, I remember it well, I believe it was Jack Nicholson announced that Crash was the winner of the Best Picture. A movie that was getting some buzz, but that was about it. Then after the show, I freaked. I had a full meltdown. I couldn't believe that, something that won Best Writing and Best Directing, and then suddenly. So I went and hit the internet, and apparently there were stories about how a lot of mainstream Hollywood stars, old white Hollywood, which is getting kind of reprimanded now, is basically said they weren't going to go see that movie. And a lot of them didn't, and said there was no way in hell they were going to go vote for this movie. And it burned my biscuits, because I realized that this wasn't about picking who the best movie was. This was just a popularity contest. And there was hints all over that Crash was going to win because so many people didn't even bother seeing Brokeback Mountain because of the subject matter. Well, I was very broken-hearted, and I think even the Oscars to this day knew a mistake was made, because when you see the best movies of all time, when they do those movie montages, because I will still watch. I stopped watching the Oscars, by the way, after Brokeback Mountain didn't win. But after that, I would still watch some of the red carpet. I still like to see what they're wearing. And sometimes I'd watch the monologue, depending on who it was. But I'd also, the next day after seeing the thing, I'd like to see the montages they do. And up until this point, Brokeback Mountain is constantly used in the montages. Crash is not. And some people have said that this is one of the cases that the Oscars got it wrong, with all due respect to Crash. But anyhow, it just devastated me, and I walked away. And it was saddened me because some of the names of the people that said they wouldn't see it are ones that were linked and rumored to be bisexual. But of course, old Hollywood would want to keep that. The thrill is that it was behind the closed doors, and they don't want to see it on the big screen. So a chance where the Oscars could have actually meant something, they let me down, and I decided I'm going to walk away from it. Now, this new campaign, for anybody who doesn't know about it, is basically Jada Pinkett went out formally saying she was going to boycott the Oscars because this year's candidates, the Oscars that are coming up, are all white people. And there was some candidates that could have. Adria Albus was rumored to possibly get a nod, and her husband, Will Smith, for a movie called Concussion. Now, personally, I think it's sour grapes. And in the past, the Oscars have not only nominated black actors and actresses, but they have won. Now, don't get me wrong. I think there is some injustice in Hollywood. I don't think it's the Oscars themselves. And I can't even believe I'm sticking up for the Oscars here, because after they broke my heart with Brokeback Mountain. But the truth of the matter is, if there's any kind of problem, it's not the Oscars, because it's just a popularity contest. I bet you if you sent out mailing things in 3 different months before the Oscars, say November, December, and January, you'll get different nominees. And the reason why is because everybody changes. You see a movie, oh, I just saw that movie again. I really think he was better the second time around. So basically, the nominations we get are just basically what's hot at the time. And then the winner comes to be what is hot at the time. And there is a Hollywood injustice, and I will say it, it's not the Oscars. It's just, yes, Hollywood should cast more black people and Chinese and Japanese and indigenous and more women even. Like, just cast more diversity, and then maybe we will get nominations, because there'll be a better chance of getting more nominations if you have more actors in different kind of roles. They've talked about whether they boycott the Oscars or not. That's everybody's business, their own. Jada Pinkett's allowed to be upset that her husband didn't get nominated. And, you know, black people have every right to boycott or get other people to boycott. That's fine. But I think it's silly to go after it. And it's kind of sad, too. Because even though I don't follow the Oscars anymore, I know people really look forward to it. They even have Oscar parties. Excuse me. They have total, you know, get-togethers and, you know, and they love it. They enjoy it. But this year it's going in like, you know, they're almost shaming people if they go to the Oscars, and it's turned it into this nasty thing. Yes, I truly believe that Hollywood, you know, should cast more diversity in their films. A movie like Star Wars The Force Awakens showed that, you know, you could have a female lead, you could have a black lead, Hispanic. They had a little bit of everything in there. And the movie was incredible still, you know, because these actors were great actors and they could, you know, they held the characters together. Now, my issue here, though, is if you start, how's a nice way to say this? They're talking now that they should try to get the Oscars where you have to have a quota of minorities or black actors. And this, I think, is a total mistake. And the reason why is because I think it's just absolutely ridiculous. Because, as I said, it's a popularity contest. And you basically, these are the people we want to nominate. And just because it becomes a white cast doesn't necessarily mean that there weren't, you know, good black actors. But how are you to say that Will Smith should be in there? Who do you knock out? Like, that's to say that, like, you know, who do you pick to knock out? It's basically 5 people. And then if you add the acting categories and you put 10 people, so there was a better chance of, you know, black or other, you know, groups to get in there, that becomes controversial too. I actually hate that the Best Picture has so many nominations in it now. I like the 5, because that made it the 5 most special movies that are nominated for Oscar. Now they have like 8, 10 sometimes, and it's just horrible. I'm glad I walked away when I had the chance. But when you start putting quotas, and if you put quotas, then you have to count other, you know, it's not just, you can't have a quote on blacks. You got, you know, in Asians, you got Hispanics, you got, you know, gay people. You could gay, and I don't want that. I would rather have a gay actor get the nomination because Hollywood has voted for it to be. Then to me, that makes it special. If you start putting a quota on it, that means not necessarily are you getting the 5 best actors. It's just you're getting a couple of great actors and then we're filling a quota. Now, I'm not trying to say that the black actors didn't deserve them, but if you just put it as the 5, you get the people who deserved it the most, or deserved it the week they voted. As I said, you ask those same people to vote again, and you probably get a different difference a week later. But if you start putting a quota, it's basically, sometimes companies have quotas, and they don't want to admit this, but I have a feeling a lot do, where they have to have a quota of a certain number of this and that. And I have no problems with that. But I am a believer of you hire the best person for the job. When you start filling a quota, you're not necessarily getting the best person for the job. You know, if a company says, okay, we need this many men, this many women, which they shouldn't be saying anyhow. You should have, you know, if women are the best person for the job, then yes, they should be the ones getting the jobs, and they should be paid equally. I'm all for that. But if you start putting people in just because they need a certain amount, you're not necessarily getting the best person for the job. And that's where I think this Oscar so white thing is really sad, because they're turning this into something that shouldn't be as over the top. There are bigger problems in the world than this. There is more things to fight than this. The fact that this has turned into a full-blown issue, the fact that I'm even talking about it here because it's out there, is ridiculous, because there is other fights for diversity that we can fight rather than this. And this just comes because basically, I don't want to put her down, I like Jada Pinkett, but basically, you know, Will Smith didn't get a nomination. So now we're going to just put everything against one another. And that's another thing I don't like. When you make it an issue like this, the issue becomes a black and white issue. Again, I am a strong supporter of human rights. But all of a sudden you play the race card, and now you're turning it into something ugly because you're trying to put everybody into position. You're forcing people to thing. And I don't think the Oscars is the place for this. I think that if they want to solve this problem in the future where more, you know, actors of, you know, color and ethnicity are more nominated, comes more into a bigger thing, as in Hollywood needs to cast more diversity in their roles. You know, this doesn't mean that they have to change things up, you know. One of the big things that bothers me, and I won't get too big into this, is when you break something down and then you replace it with something. Women fought to get into like gyms and golf courses and stuff like that. And then they fought and finally got into, you know, co-ed gyms, the whole works. Now what's happening is we have gyms that are women only. And I am not for that. I don't think destroying one thing and then creating something else that basically the same situation that we had before is not righting a wrong. I heard recently that, you know, kids are trying to fit in by coming out at school. And I think that's great. There's more communication. Kids are feeling more comfortable coming out in school. I think that's wonderful. But then I hear rumors of them trying to start opening schools just for gay kids. I'm a gay man and I find this totally offensive, because now you're going to segregate people. Now we're going to have our own institution. And I am crazy about this, because it just drives me nuts, because you can't do that. I'm getting a little bit off topic, but it's a similar thing. Hollywood, yes, is run by a lot of old white guys. Yes, that's true. But there is a lot of people that vote for the Oscars, and it should be about who the best performance is when they go. If you start putting quotas, you're not getting the best things. The Oscars are kind of a joke anyhow, you know. They're fun to follow. By all means, have yourself your Oscar parties and everything. I just think personally it's a little crazy. Okay, I've spoken enough on this. I've probably spoken way too much. I'm going to hear nasty stuff now, but that's okay, because that's the way I feel, and that's what this show is about. I'm going to take something a little more lighthearted. I'm going to take a look at some movies that you may not have seen yet, and I'm just going to make a list of a couple of movies that I think you should check out if you haven't, and that's coming up when we come back. Welcome back. Devlin here with you, getting ready for another segment the weather's been getting colder, and it's Canada, it's February, it should be colder. So that means a lot of nights that we can talk ourselves leaving the house and just staying home and watching TV. And there's a lot of good shows on TV you can catch. And I like that I'm actually dealing with this, because I just mentioned that you shouldn't always spend time watching TV and be creative, and now I get a segment where I want you to stay watching TV. But anyhow, what I'm going to do is, we all know I'm a movie buff, and I've seen a lot of big-name movies, and I've seen a lot of little-known movies, and I decided that I'm going to just quickly run down a whole bunch of movies that, if you're looking for something different, maybe a little bit off the mainstream, some of these movies were fairly mainstream, some weren't. Some, I think, deserve a second chance. Some were missed altogether. Some may even take a little bit for you to find, but these are movies I all recommend, and I really, if you're looking for something different, and you trust my advice, or, you can watch them and then yell at me because I led you astray. Either way, here's a list of just some movies. I think I might do this every once in a while, because there's just so many great movies out there, and it bothers me when I hear people just seeing, just only the blockbusters or the A-listers, and, there's so much out there. Some of these may be on Netflix, some you may even find on YouTube or other streaming sections, but I think they're all worth a second chance. 2 from the action department, if you're an action fan, District B13 is definitely one you should check out. This is actually a French action movie that came out probably about a decade ago. And yeah, French and action movie don't necessarily seem to go together. They're not known, the French, have released a lot of great movies, but they're not really known for their action films. But this is one hell of a movie. It's basically, it's a cop kind of drama with some criminal elements, but it's the stunt work that is just so phenomenal. It's basically kind of a futuristic place where a cop has to team up with an undesirable, we'll call it, to get into this thing in order to find what they're looking for. I know I'm trying to be generic. I just don't like to give too many spoilers out. But the stunts are phenomenal. This is not done by CGI. There's a lot of parkour in it. There's just some incredible things. It has to be seen to believe. There was actually a sequel because it did so well. I have not seen the sequel yet, but District B13, check it out. It is also known as District 13, but that's the French version. It's just a bug nuts movie. You should check it out. Also in the action fair, Series 7, The Contenders. This was a movie that came out, we're probably going way past a decade ago. And it was actually a movie that kind of predicted where the future of reality television is going to go. It's basically supposed to be like the final episode of a reality show where basically it's a lottery where everybody's picked to survive. They have something like 6 or 7 contestants, and these people basically have to kill the other ones. And if you survive, if you're the lone survivor in 7 episodes, you get your freedom. And it's just a phenomenally out there movie, and I'm saddened so many people haven't heard this. This is actually the final, the 7, where the woman who's been in it is going for her 7th round. She survived 7, and they're picking a new draw with 6 new contenders. But the problem is she is actually pregnant, and she has to fight her way through these other people, and they don't bear no bones. There's like young people in this. There's everything. It's a little uber violent, but not grotesquely violent, but it's such a great commentary on the world. Check it out. For comedy, I'm going to start with Gosford Park. Now, this actually did make some money at the theater, but I think it's a movie that's kind of gotten lost, and I think it's worth a look. It's kind of Downton Abbey meets Clue. It's got an all-star cast with, I always forget her name, Maggie Smith, Clive Owen, Richard E. Grant, Ryan Phillippe. There's just a ton of people in this. And it's like a old, like Downton Abbey where all the servants and all the rich people are having this weekend together. And it's a comedy. But what's funny about it is there's a murder mystery that happens. And what I love about it is nobody seems to take this murder mystery seriously. They just want to get on with their lives, and they hate that they're quarantined in this house until they find the murderer. It is so much fun. I actually went to see this in the theater 2 or 3 times. I just absolutely loved it. Check it out. Another rare one, Fatal Instinct. If you're a fan of the airplane humor, you know, like the Naked Gun humor, that really over-the-top stuff, Fatal Instinct was a movie starring Sean Young and Armand Assante that basically made fun of the Basic Instinct, Fatal Attraction type movies, where it's kind of almost like a noir piece with that thriller element. Sean Young never became a household name. She was in a couple of movies like No Way Out, Blade Runner, a couple movies. But she is so phenomenally funny in this movie. It is just a crazy movie, but only check it out if you're a fan of that airplane type humor, because you're not going to like it. If you didn't like Airplane, which in my opinion is the granddaddy of all those sight gag and loony one-liners, if you didn't like that, you won't like this. But if you did, give it a try. Fatal Instinct. And I think the name is what scared a lot of people off, because it actually sounds just like a real thriller like that. Anyhow, 2 dramas. This one is out there. You can find it. It's called Warrior. And it's a boxing movie that stars Joel Edgerton, Nick Nolte, and Tom Hardy. And this is a phenomenal film about 2 brothers who are brought up as boxers. And their father trained them and also kind of taught them to be against one another. It is a great film. Nick Nolte was up for an Oscar nomination for this movie. It should have got more love. I think the reason it didn't was that I believe The Wrestler came out the year before, and I think people were just in love with that, and usually Oscars don't recognize too many sports movies in a row. It's too bad. It's a great film. Check it out. Another drama I'm going to recommend, also available, another Tom Hardy movie, in fact, Lawless. This is Tom Hardy and Shia LaBeouf, and this is loosely based on a true story about a group of brothers that run moonshine in the 20s. And it's just a great film if you like those kind of gangster type films. You know, this is about these brothers trying to keep the family together by selling their moonshine, and basically they're bringing in, you know, the FBI, the police, in order to catch them. And it's such a great film, and a phenomenal soundtrack too, with, you know, everybody from Emmylou Harris to just some great, like bluegrassy type music. For the family, I'm going to recommend 2 films. One's an older one from the 80s. It's called The Boy Who Could Fly. And there's not a lot of big stars in this one. This actually flopped at the box office. I always avoided this film like the plague. I'm not sure why. Because I remember one time I was sick. I thought, oh, this sounds horrible, The Boy Who Could Fly. And then one day I was sick, and I watched it back in the days with Super Channel, and absolutely fell in love with this movie. I always recommend this movie. And if you've never seen it, okay, it's a little dated because of thing, but it actually holds up pretty well. It's basically about a boy who has kind of like autism, and his next door neighbor, and she befriends him, and he constantly has this thing where he climbs up on the roof, and he basically just stands up there pretending to fly. And her life, you know, she's just moved to a new city, and she's trying to get friends, but because, you know, she's the only one who seems to connect with this boy, you know, people think, you know, she's, you know, something wrong with her and the whole works. And, you know, she befriends him, and it's just a sweet love story. And then one day something happens where, no, I don't want to spoil too much, but basically she starts believing that maybe he can fly. And I love it because the movie, you're not sure if he can or not until the very end. It's such a great movie. I could spend a lot of time talking about it, but I won't. The other one for the family I'm going to recommend is, okay, I want to get this name right. Alexander and the Terrible, Horrible, No Good, Very Bad Day. This is a new movie. This actually was just in theaters maybe about a year and a half ago. I just got to see it, and I actually really loved it. It's basically about this kid who, Alexander, who everything bad happens to him. And he hates that everything he tries to do gets screwed up, and he kind of curses his family for one day to make them see what it's like. And so things good start happening to him, but the rest of the family is in major turmoil, and they try desperately to get through this day where just everything can happen. Steve Carell is in this movie, and so is Jennifer Garner. I was pleasantly surprised by this film, and it's one of those ones that the whole family can watch. I thought it was genuinely kind of funny, and just kind of sincere as well. For you horror buffs, I recommend two. I think I recommended this one as one of the best of the year, but I didn't really get to talk about it. It was called Goodnight Mummy. It's an Austrian horror film, which is not like your typical slasher type films. This is actually a psychological thriller that keeps you on the edge of your seat. It's basically about twin boys who stay with their mother, but their visit this time isn't regular because their mother has been disfigured and wears like wraps from an automobile accident, and basically they start getting convinced that this isn't their mother. It is a twisted film. I'm not going to say any more. Just this takes its time. It's what I like to call a slow simmer. And every minute, just from the visualization to the way the boys are played, there is subtitles involved, but oh my God, this is such a crazy, crazy movie. And it will have you twists and turns, lefts and right, and it's just amazing. Now, if you're more of the slasher film type, I really liked a movie called Midnight Movie. I picked this up and was so blown away by it. It's not brilliant, like it's not up there as one of the greatest, but I like this because it was kind of unique. It's basically a movie where a guy directed it, put it together, and it's found out that he was a psychopath and all the killings in the movie are real. And he is put into a psychiatric ward, and this movie was basically pretty much been shelved because all the deaths are real. A little movie theater has a midnight showing, and they get a hold of a copy of it and decide to show it. Well, the psychopathic director manages to escape, and the detective comes to the showing, and since this movie's so rare, there's only a handful of patrons in the movie. But basically, the movie slowly becomes reality when when things happen. It's really unique, and I like it because I like movies that are based in movie theaters. Everything happens in the movie theater. It's a wild movie. I don't think it got any love. It's called Midnight Movie, and check it out. If you're a musical fan, these two are fairly high profile, but they're so good I think you should hunt them out. First off, Hedwig and the Angry Inch. This has become even more popular now that Neil Patrick Harris revived it on Broadway. And I think more people got interested and went to check out the movie because the movie's phenomenal. It was an off-Broadway show, and I always forget the name of the man who directed it, wrote it, and starred in it. I want to say it's like John Mitchell Cameron or something. But anyhow, he took his off-Broadway one, made this a movie, and it's a phenomenal movie. The music is just incredible. I could listen to this soundtrack all over. It's basically about rock this rock star that had a botched, operation when they tried to have a sex change, and them trying to do an American tour, and it's just falling. And it's just funny. The music's phenomenal. I can't describe it to give it enough credit. Just check it out. Thank me later. The other one is a movie that was small at the box office, but wound up becoming big because they just made a Broadway musical of it, and I think it went on to win Tonys and the whole thing, and it's simply called Once. It is a story about a young woman that befriends an older man. They both have, their big love is music, and they come together to write some incredible music, but you're not sure if there's going to be a romance, a friendship. This is actually loosely based on a couple, and I believe his name is like Glenn Hards. I can't remember their names. Anyhow, the couple in it was an actual married couple that did music, or I don't know if they were married, and they basically did this movie, and they broke up, sadly, but this movie is such a beautiful film, and again, the music is a highlight. This isn't your traditional musical where they break out in song, like, as they're telling the story. This is basically musical moments where they just sing the songs and stuff. But it is still a nice one, and I'm sure any of you have seen it. They're probably getting a nice, warm, gushy feeling for you. And finally, I'm going to wrap with some sci-fi movies for you. I will start with one called Sunshine. This, again, wasn't seen by many people. Hopefully sci-fi fans went and saw it. It's Cillian Murphy and Chris Evans and a couple other people that are failing to come to my head. Basically, that's the story of a mission of a spaceship that's heading out to space to basically reignite the sun. The sun has been slowly dying, and they have to send a charge to try to save it and also save Earth. As they get closer and closer to the sun, strange things start to happen. Just a great mix of science fiction, thriller, phenomenal movie. Check it out. And I'm going to end with another one that's kind of sci-fi, horror, thriller, Event Horizon. And this is a movie that I've even seen, I think Family Guy's dealt with it. I think I've even heard something on The Simpsons. This is a movie that you either love or you hate. I happen to love the movie. It's basically, again, a spaceship is sent out when they to search for a missing thing that suddenly has reappeared after being missing for years, and they have to go find this other spaceship in order to see if there's what's happened to it or if there's any survivors, and a lot of crazy stuff starts happening. This is a psychological thriller. It's got some ghost story in it. It's got a little bit of horror in there, and I definitely think it's worth a second viewing. Anyhow, there's a whole bunch of movies you can either watch either on a cold night when you're going through Netflix, or when you want to order something or can't find anything, or just movies for on a night when you just want to try something different, or maybe recheck something you've seen. Maybe you've seen one of these films and think, you know what, that is a good film. I think they're all enjoyable. I think you'll all enjoy them, or I wouldn't send it out. I think I'll do this once in a while because I like to pay tribute to movies that are maybe lesser known. Some of these, as I said, were okay even at the box office, and a lot of people saw it, but I think they need a second viewing. Anyhow, the show's over, so why don't you go start looking for these titles right now? As I said, you can probably find some for sale. Some are probably on Netflix. Some are on any other of the streaming networks. Some you might even find on YouTube. You never know. Anyhow, that's my show tonight. I am going to head off now and probably watch a movie myself. No, I think I'll go and be creative. We'll bring it right back around again. Anyhow, I will see you next week, and I look forward to talking to you then.